Welcome back to What You Will Learn. My name is Adam Ashton, and today we are interviewing Michael Shermer. Michael Shermer is the author of the book we just did on the weekend called Skeptic, which is all about looking at the world through a rational eye. You know, questioning everything you hear and always looking for the truth, not looking for persuasion and people's claims and new ideas. Always, you know, that scientific, rational framework around everything. So Michael Shermer is the founder of the Skeptic Society, which is over 50,000 members today. He's the editor-in-chief of Skeptic Magazine. He's written books, he's written articles, he's produced TV shows. He's done everything pretty much. He's the man when it comes to skepticism. And he's got a brand new book, which we dive into, called Heavens on Earth. He was looking at heaven, utopia, all these wonderful things through a rational eye. Now, Adam Jones features on this interview, as always. I think he has gone to look at some more 9/11 conspiracy videos because Michael Shermer debunked and completely changed his worldview. So who knows where Jones Man is going to land on the 9/11 conspiracy. Anyway, here is Michael Shermer.
So skeptic is just a scientific way of looking at the world. Skepticism is, that is we accept claims only when there's adequate evidence for them. And we always begin with the null hypothesis. That is, your claim is not true until you prove otherwise. Uh-huh. And, of course, skeptics believe all sorts of things. The Big Bang theory of the creation of the universe, the theory of evolution, the germ theory of disease, plate tectonics, and so on. And the reason for that is because there's lots of evidence for it. And climate change would be another one. Anthropogenic global warming. It's real. It's true because there's overwhelming evidence for it. Otherwise, I'd be skeptical, which I was in the 90s and early 2000s because I didn't think the evidence was all that overwhelming. Now it's overwhelming. So when we talk about the consensus in science, like in that example, we don't mean a democracy like, let's everybody vote and see how you feel about climate change. No, it's that the vast majority of scientific papers point in that direction. So that gives us confidence that it'd be too much to say that it's true with a capital T, because in science we're mostly falsifying or debunking not true ideas, and the ones left standing are the ones that we have some confidence are true. So that's the skeptic position. If you say Bigfoot is real, I say okay, show me the body, and I'll believe. Aliens have visited Earth. Super interesting. Show me the spacecraft. Show me the alien bodies, and I will believe. But in science, things like blurry photographs and grainy videos and stories about things that go bump in the night, that's not adequate evidence. So that's where skepticism comes in.
Yeah. And so just on that, how do you know what sources you can or can't trust, and how do you separate, I guess, the facts or the arguments from the persuasion and the presentation?
Yeah, so this is a super important question now, particularly with fake news and alternative facts and all the stuff we're going through. You have in an open society, you have fact checkers and fact checkers of the fact checkers. So although it's somewhat discouraging since the last election, all the claims that are made that are now called fake news or alternative facts, there have arisen in pulp culture these fact-checking sites like PolitiFact, for example. Snopes has been around for a long time. We love Snopes. They do a lot. We do a lot what Snopes does, although ours is more narrowly focused in scientific claims. But, like with PolitiFact, for example, these are the ones that rate things as true, possibly true, not sure, probably false, and pants on fire.
Nice.
It's really funny. And but they've become kind of a clickbait to go-to site for fact-checking politicians' speeches in real time. Mm-hmm. And so this is a good anecdote to this, that, at some point politicians writing speeches are going to have to go, okay, well, if I just make this claim and throw it out there, somebody's going to nail me on it. So I better at least fact check it myself or have my people fact check it. Yeah. So in terms of science, everybody that works in the business kind of knows there's sort of a hierarchy of journals. Some are better than others. It has to do with with their ratings which it's kind of similar to the Google PageRank system. That is, the more people that cite articles in a particular journal, the higher up the scale or hierarchy that journal goes in terms of its prestige. So, of course, more scientists want to publish there, so it's harder to get in, and the standards go even higher, and it just keeps going that way. So you have like Science and Nature, or Journal of the American Medical Association, or the British Journal of Medicine, and Lancet, and so on. And these kind of there's nobody on top saying this is who you should read. It happens just bottom up. In the same way that things go viral on the internet, no one determines that. It just happens based on what people are interested in and who they trust. So I'm reasonably confident that the system is working. There's always been fake news and alternative facts. We just didn't call it that. Back when I was in college, and Nixon Watergate thing was unfolding, I was taking a political science class at the time of Watergate. So our textbook was the New York Times every day.
What was Watergate? Do you know what that one was?
Yeah, give us a quick. I think younger Aussies probably don't know a whole lot about it.
Watergate is where during the 1972 election run-up to that, President Nixon had his thugs break into the a Democratic office that was at this hotel called Watergate. And now that's become, the gate has become everything, You throw gate on the end of it. And basically that's a meme of, when there's like overreach or, illegal activity or something that then explodes in the media as a huge event. This was just a minor break-in by a couple of, FBI thugs, G-men just, looking for files. And this is the best example I can think of how conspiracies actually work. There are conspiracies. Watergate was a conspiracy. Nixon didn't ask anybody's permission. He just had his guys go in there and break into this hotel room and try to steal some files of his opponent. And but here, the most powerful president the most powerful political leader in the world, in the most powerful country in the world, couldn't even break into a hotel room so, without getting caught. Or more colorfully, President Clinton couldn't even get a blowjob in the White House. So the idea that there's this cabal of a handful of people running the world and running the economy and declaring wars and orchestrating these vast complex systems is just ludicrous, because what we know happens is typically small scale, and most of the people involved are inept.
And one of the biggest conspiracies, and we'll probably go through your book Skeptic before we get into your new book, but I know Adam Ashton here, he got me onto this conspiracy.
Only since you told me.
How the US, were responsible for 9/11. So that's, I guess, along the lines of what you're talking about now. Can you help debunk that theory a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good example. I mean, the claim is that 9/11 was not orchestrated by Al Qaeda, but that the Bush administration did it. Well, there's different versions depending on who you talk to. Either the Bush administration orchestrated the thing, or they knew it was happening, going to happen, and they let it happen in order to galvanize the American people so that we could go to war in the Middle East in the interest of oil and so forth. Okay. So the first one is super easy to debunk, because we know the planes hit the buildings, you can see it. And so the idea that in addition to the planes hitting the buildings, there were also operatives who snuck into the World Trade Center buildings, two of the most secure buildings in the world, with guards all over the place. You have to have password cards, key cards to get in, and so on. Somehow they got in there, broke through all the drywall, planted these explosive devices on the vertical support structures, and on and on. This would take months to do. We know this from people that intentionally demolish buildings that they're going to tear down, and it takes them months to prepare it. And, so somehow they were able to do this without anybody noticing. And then they planted the bombs at the exact floor, at the right exact angle that the planes hit. Impossible. And that's just the start. Not to mention, this would take, hundreds, maybe thousands of people involved, and not one person has written a book, gone on a podcast or talk show to say, you're not going to believe it. Or their boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife said, boy, I was sleeping with this guy and he told me this incredible story, that he broke in, that Bush himself ordered it, nothing like that. Now, the idea that the Bush administration allowed it to happen, well, okay, again, this is the competency problem. Somehow they knew all this stuff, but we know from all the intel memos that came in, like in August, the month before September 11th. There was a famous one that Condoleezza Rice got, Secretary of State, on August 9th, saying, Al-Qaeda to strike United States on U.S. soil. Wow, that sounds pretty damning. Until you read in the context that these organizations receive hundreds, thousands of pieces of intel every day. Yeah. And after the fact, you can go back and, oh, look, they should have known, because look at that one right there. Well, what about all the other ones? So this is the curse of knowledge. We already know what happened. So with the hindsight bias, we can look back and say, they should have done this. Yeah, but if you didn't know all the things that happened, how would you know that particular one is the key one? So this is how we know 9/11, not to mention Al-Qaeda, said they did it, boasted about it. Yeah. They would try to do it again. They have tried to do it again many times. They did do it again, in London and Madrid and so on. So that's pretty much the end of the 9/11 truthers.
What are some other crazy conspiracies, or what are your favorite ones to take down?
Well, that one's kind of the craziest at the moment, although the mother of all of them seems to be JFK. I'm not 100% sure why, but he was good looking, handsome, articulate, powerful, and I think there's something of a cognitive dissonance between the size of the event and the cause of the event. We want them to be balanced. Like the Holocaust was orchestrated and committed by the Nazis. So you have the worst atrocity in human history committed by the worst political regime in human history. There's a kind of a match there. If you say, like, back to 9/11, 9/11 was this horrific event committed by 19 guys with box cutters. I mean, what? I mean, it seems like you need something big to match that big event. And, JFK was assassinated by who? Lee Harvey Oswald. Who's that? He's just this loser, this nobody, this wingnut. And so you got to add layers in. So he's down here, JFK's up here. So no, it was the FBI and the CIA and the KGB and the Mafia. And you sort of add all those, like Princess Diana, cause of death, speeding, drunk driving, no seatbelt. This is the most common form of traffic deaths in the world. And but princesses don't die like the hoi polloi die, right? So again, you had the royal family and the Arab family and this MI5 and so on, all were involved. So I think there's something about that. And then there's another thing, like the resurrection of the Messiah. It's like the great leaders and kings and alpha males, whatever, they don't really die. They just go somewhere else. I got just another article recently of, Hitler didn't kill himself in the bunker. He escaped and he moved to Australia, to Argentina. Yeah, no, he's not in Australia.
Good to know.
And there's just, Elvis is still alive somewhere, living with Princess Diana and their lover. There's just crazy stories. Yeah. Although we routinely accept the deaths of common people. Like, of course, he was drunk driving, of course. But, with somebody special, it doesn't, there's a cognitive disconnect there, a cognitive dissonance that we have to correct.
Yeah. Another one in the book, and this is something I kind of fell for, is on this documentary called What the Bleak Do You Know? When I first saw it, I thought I was blown away, but it takes all these things from quantum physics, like the double slit experiment and the uncertainty principle and all this, and then applies it to the macro kind of level. And then this whole New Age movement has come with this. So what do you say to debunk these kind of how the quantum level applies to everyday life?
Well, the general idea is that, quantum physics is spooky and weird, and consciousness is spooky and weird. So they must be connected. Well, not necessarily. There's lots of spooky and weird things. It doesn't mean they're causally connected. What people are going for there is the fact that we don't have a good explanation for consciousness. We don't have a good explanation for, say, altered states of consciousness because we don't have a cogent theory of consciousness. not how neurons work and all that. We understand that, but how it is that you and I can do what we're doing now, just looking out at the world through our eyes. The lights are on upstairs. We're fully aware and we're experiencing something. That's hard to explain. That's why it's called the hard problem. And there's no unified theory of quantum physics and general relativity, and there is no one single big theory of everything in physics. So the fact that there's this kind of open-ended questions leads people to kind of opens the door for people to dive in with their theories, which is fine. Karl Popper famously called this conjecture and refutation. That is, what scientists do is they conjecture stuff. They just throw a lot of hypotheses out there and see what sticks. And what's left standing after most of them have been debunked is, well, I wouldn't say true, but not false yet. So, those are the ones we can be reasonably confident in. So we don't really have that yet for consciousness. If you read any of the great books on consciousness, you'll see, there's like half a dozen popular theories about it. And no one agrees which is the right one. So that kind of opens the door for everybody and their brother to jump in. Yeah. The same thing with physics. Yeah.
Yeah. As a segue into heavens on earth now, so why do people believe some of those things without a rational mind, and what makes us, believe things that might have no kind of rational base or scientific truth to it?
Well, because we're not natural born scientists. Our brains think anecdotally. We evolved on the savannas of Africa. We're not used to, contemplating things that are running faster than a cheetah, like the speed of light, which is way faster than a cheetah, or something larger than, let's say, a mountain range. Like a galaxy, star galaxies, expanding universe. These kinds of things that we talk about in science now are just so vastly beyond what our intuitions can grasp. String theory. Every documentary you've ever seen on string theory shows a violin. It's like it's nothing to do with violins. They're going for some kind of metaphor and analogy that helps us hook something in our brain. It's kind of like this, not really, but kind of. So I think we do the best we can. We have reason as a tool that we've honed over the last couple centuries through science and philosophy and logic and so on. But that takes some training, some practice, some kind of effort to overcome the anecdote. So in the classic case of what we've been debunking recently of autism and vaccinations, the anti-vaxxers say, well, look, this mom had her kid vaccinated and 3 weeks later he was diagnosed with autism. There must be a connection. Okay, maybe, but this has now since been debunked. But anecdotally, this happened and that happened. In time, they're close. And so our brains are naturally evolved to find a connection between temporally related possible causal events. And sometimes that's true. They are causally connected, but sometimes not. The only way to find out is to employ science, but that doesn't come naturally. What comes naturally is just, I saw this and then that happened, and so they must be connected. And so that's where we get into trouble, I think.
Nice. And so I guess sort of from the new book that you've got, that all different religions seems to have some kind of something that happens after life, whether it's heaven or a whole lot of virgins, or whether it's reincarnation or something happens. We don't just die and that's it. And so you went to check it out, yeah?
Yeah, that's the new book. Heavens on Earth is it's, as I say here, the scientific search for the afterlife, immortality, and utopia. I started off by saying, first, you can't even conceive of what it's like to be dead, because to conceive of anything, you have to be alive. So we have something of a paradox. Imagine being dead. You can't do it. Just to imagine anything, you have to be sentient and conscious. So right off the bat, that presents something of a problem. We can't imagine being dead. So the only thing we can imagine is continuing on somehow. But we see people die, so we naturally think, well, there must be something else that continues. And what is that something else? Well, we're also natural-born dualists. That is, I write about Paul Bloom's research at Yale with little kids. These are preschoolers. And they give them a little puppet show. Here's a little mouse, and an alligator munches the mouse and kills him. Okay, where's the mouse? Oh, the mouse he's off at this other place, and he misses his mommy, and he's lonely, and he's thirsty. These little kids, they haven't been enculturated into dualism and Descartes, whatever. They're just thinking, well, he must be somewhere else now. Well, who's the he? well, it's not the body because the body's right there. So it must be something else. So we have this kind of idea that there's body and soul, brain and mind, and corporeal and incorporeal, material and immaterial. And that just seems to be wired into our brains. And so we imagine, I can't imagine being dead, so there must be something, my soul, that continues on. So that is what most people believe. We materialists, scientists, are in the minority for sure, that think, well, this is all there is. And after your body dies, you just cease to exist, much like general anesthesia. It's just 10, 9, 8, boom, boom, lights out, and you don't wake up. That's the only thing I can think of that it could be like. Now, if it turned out that there is some other place, and I wake up and there's, my friends Carl Sagan and Stephen Jay Gould and my parents and, people I knew that are gone already, okay, great, I think, hopefully. It's a good place. Yeah. I'm not against any of this. There's just no evidence for it. So back to your first question, what's a skeptic? The default position is just, it's probably not true, but I'm open to evidence for it.
Yeah. So why do we invent these stories about where we go to, or so-called invent it? And does science know for sure, or is there a bit of uncertainty there as well at the end, and some room for?
Well, we don't know for sure. First of all, we don't know for sure we go anywhere, but we can't also say that we know you don't go anywhere. So I don't know if there's an afterlife or not. And I'm pretty confident there probably isn't, but if there is, again, I'll be open to it. But the point of my book, particularly I get to the last chapter saying, well, okay, so all these theories don't hold water, including the scientific ones. You're going to upload your mind and live in a cloud somewhere, all this bunch of nonsense. What's the point of it? What's the point of it? Well, you're missing the point if you're focused on the afterlife, because you don't live in the afterlife. We live in this life. If you're too focused on the hereafter, you're going to miss the here and now, because the here and now is where we're at. This is it, today, right now. Make the most of it. Live a good life. Be kind to other people. Have meaningful relationships, meaningful work. Try to make the world just a little bit better place. And what most people want, like Woody Allen, they don't want to live on in their work. They want to live on in their apartment. Yeah. I get that. I totally get it. I don't want to die. I love, here I live in California. It's beautiful. It's fun. I love every day. I don't want it to end, but don't focus on, what's coming. Focus on just today. That's it.
Yeah. That's interesting. And and you sort of said there that it's not just religion that has these ideas of, heaven or reincarnation or whatever it may be. And it's not just the hope of there's something more, but it's also science. Some scientists are trying to, extend life so that we never die. Or as you say, there is the other ideas of uploading your mind to the cloud. So it's not just religion, is it?
No. There's quite a movement now that this was the spark of the book initially was, who are these people that want to live forever? I mean, they're not theists, obviously. Most of them are atheists. I call this Afterlife for atheists. They want to keep going. So you have the radical life extensionists that, through diet and exercise and supplements and this and that, body part replacements and genetic engineering and so on, just keep going. Okay, well, there's lots and lots of problems with that. We're not even remotely close to anybody living beyond the upper ceiling of about 120 years. This notion that we live twice as long as people did centuries ago is nonsense. People centuries ago lived 80, 90, 100 years old, just not very many of them. Now lots and lots of us are making it closer and closer to the upper ceiling because of vaccinations and public health and modern medicine and all that great stuff. And it's good, but no one's living beyond that upper ceiling. So what they want to do is somehow break through that. And there's dozens of things that would have to happen between now and then, and we've solved none of them. So the stuff that Aubrey de Grey, he's on record saying the first person to live 1,000 years is alive today. Okay, well, I like Aubrey because he likes beer. And and apparently beer is in the formula somewhere, so okay, I'm good with that. But I don't think that's really going to do it. But again, back to my previous point, beer does make today a little bit better. It's nice.
Probably doesn't make tomorrow so good if you go too hard.
Yeah, if you go, that's right. Tomorrow morning won't be so good. Maybe tomorrow afternoon. But the idea that somehow I'm doing this so I can live in a century from now, I'll still be alive. Don't worry about a century from now. Worry about tomorrow. And when they say, Shermer, don't you want to live to be 500 years old? I say, listen, just get me to 80 without cancer. Get me to 90 without Alzheimer's. Get me to 100 without, being in a bed on a morphine drip. Just a quality of life year after year. And if it keeps going, fine, that's great. But then there's another problem with the others, like the mind uploading. I don't think it would be you that would continue on. Because when they talk about making a copy of your so-called connectome, which is the analog to your genome, so your connectome is all your memories in the connections between your neurons. That's where memories are stored. If we copy that and put it in a computer or in the cloud, the idea is we turn it on and you wake up in there. I don't think you'd wake up anywhere. I think it would just be a copy of you, any more than a twin looks at its sibling and says, well, there I am. No, I'm still here. Because if we did this while you were still alive, scanned your brain through a sophisticated fMRI brain scanner, and then uploaded it to the cloud and turned it on, and you're still standing there next to the machine going, well, I'm not up there. I'm right here. Dude, here. So, it's not you. In that movie Transcendence with Johnny Depp, he plays this computer scientist who gets assassinated with some polonium radiation poisoning. He's got like a week to live or something like that. Anyway, so he spends the time uploading his mind into the computer and turns it on. He's in there, looking out through the little camera hole. No, that's not what's going to happen. No. And this is, so I actually have a whole chapter on the nature of the soul and the self and who you are, the problem of identity. Who are you? Because we know that your body is completely replaced, almost completely replaced every 7 to 10 years. All the cells are recycled. You have new molecules and atoms. You're not the same person you were a decade ago, but you still feel like you. So what is that? So it's not the material self. It's the pattern of information that represents you. So somehow that would have to be copied and continued with not only that, but also your point of view self, the POV self, the you looking out through your eyes, moment to moment to moment. Now, there is a break in consciousness every night when you go to sleep, although there's some dreams, so it continues a little bit. But the idea that you could transfer the point of view self into the computer is what I doubt.
Damn, I've been watching a lot of Black Mirror lately, and I was hoping I'd be able to, upload myself a few hundred times.
I got to binge watch that series. People keep telling me about it. I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, yeah, it's bloody good. So I guess the message of your book to the end is, you're not going to be able to upload yourself. You're not going to go somewhere when you die, most likely. So you're going to enjoy today, whatever you're doing, and enjoy the rest of your life.
I think that's a good outcome. And a much more, you can take control, take a bit of responsibility, and yeah.
And it's not just pleasure seeking. It's not like let's just hook up to the morphine drip or go into virtual reality or watch porn all day or something.
That sounds good.
It's like, of course, here we are, guys, talking about this. But that isn't where the action is. Really, what we know from the literature and psychologists who study well-being and happiness and purposefulness and so on, it isn't just trying to do pleasurable things every day, although that's certainly part of life, but more meaningful or more long-term, in terms of like helping other people, working for charities, being, raising children, being a caretaker to your parents. These things aren't fun in the same way like going out to dinner with your friends are, or playing a sport for an hour. That's fun. Caretaking for a parent is not fun, but it's meaningful. It gives you more purpose. So a purpose-driven life is more important than a pleasure-driven life. Although it's okay to have pleasure too, just you got to mix it up. So we know so I kind of outlined what we know from the research on this, and it's a balance. It's okay to have pleasurable things every day, but also some long-term things like next year I want to do this, or develop a new career, or raise children, get married, take care of parents, whatever. Those things aren't fun in the same pleasurable way, but they're meaningful.
Awesome, love it.
I think that's a phenomenal outcome.
As we get toward the end now, what are some of your favourite books or books that have been really influential on your career?
Well, for me, early on, I read a lot of Stephen Jay Gould and Carl Sagan and Richard Dawkins, and just in terms of their writing about science in a way that anybody could understand, but not dumbing down. Mm-hmm. Like Dawkins' book, The Selfish Gene, this was just voted in the UK as the most important science book of the 20th century. Wow. But it's not the popular version of the technical theory. It's the only version that he has of that. And anyone can read it. Same thing with Jared Diamond's Guns, Germs, and Steel. Won the Pulitzer Prize. This is not the popular version of his technical papers he published somewhere. No, it's the only version there is. So I admire that. I try to do that with my books. I think Steven Pinker is really successful at that. Banner Angels of Our Nature, I felt was the most important social science book ever written. He's got a new one coming out, Enlightenment Now, that I finished and reviewed for Science. I think it's great. Dawkins, of course, Dan Dennett's pretty good at this. Sam Harris is a clear writer. Hitch, of course, on political, Christopher Hitchens on political, social things, less than science, but still I like his writing style. So I think those books and those authors I get a lot from.
Nice. Yeah. There's a few to add to the list there for sure. And I guess as we wrap it up as well, where can people find you and what projects are coming up next?
Well, skeptic.com is our the webpage for Skeptic Magazine, which anyone can subscribe to, even in Australia. Yeah. We have a strong digital presence now. You can get Skeptic on any of the digital platforms, and but michaelshermer.com, of course, Amazon carries all my books. And fine bookstores everywhere carry the physical book. I still like the physical book. I mean,
same. Awesome.
I read the newspaper every morning, a physical newspaper. I love just sitting outside with a book, and nothing wrong with ebooks. And I listen to audiobooks when I'm cycling or driving around Southern California, but there's still nothing better than a physical book. So I'm glad I try to support brick and mortar bookstores when I can, because I don't want the Amazon Leviathan to take over the world. Not that I have anything against them being big or whatever. It's just that I like bookstores, and there's still, and I think there will always be a place for that.
We hope you enjoyed that interview. We just wanted to remind you, we've read some bloody good books this season so far, and you can win them all.
Yep. So we've got a prize. So there's 3 ways you can enter this, and it is absolute bonanza.
Yeah, mate, it is a bonanza, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, If You Can Grow Rich, Start With Why, to name just a few of the 48 books that you can win. So you can firstly fill out the survey at whatyouwilllearn.com/survey. Very short, 2 minutes.
Yep, and you can see that in the show notes of all our episodes. The second one is leave a review for us.
Yeah, we'll find that. And the third way is to just buy a book.
Yeah.
Have a read, send us a picture of the book or the receipt or something at podcast@whatyouwilllearn.com, and that's it. You can enter 3 times, 3 chances
3
to
times.
win.
Each time, probably maximum 3 minutes time investment, and you could land 50 fucking good books, which you can use yourself or give as gifts. Yeah, good shit.